might have met Carol before. She's been here once before.
I was here last year.
Glad we didn't scare you off too much.
Not at all.
So,
I was very welcome last time. I was thrilled when you invited me back.
So Carol is a St. Louis Advanced Master Gardener, Master Naturalist, and Plant Doctor at Missouri Botanical Garden and the University of Missouri Extension. So she's a retired professional career as a microbiologist, and in her retirement completed a degree in horticulture and a Master Naturalist certificate at St. Louis Community College. She is a past St. Louis Master Gardener of the Year, is a member of the Master Gardener Speakers Bureau. She gives nature talks as well as talks on orchids and general interest plant-related presentations. So let's welcome Carol.
This is a nature talk. I hope all of you here love nature.
Yes.
Especially when it's getting ready to pop right now, right? And you all aren't going to be offended if I sit down. I got two new knees, and they're great for hiking, but they're not so great for standing for an hour. Yeah. Can any of you identify with that? I'm sure you can. Okay. I represent St. Louis Master Gardener Speakers Bureau. We are a group of volunteers, and I consider these talks my gift to the community. I give a lot of them, and I love doing it. So why does Missouri have such a rich natural diversity? And this is a great book, by the way. So its location, the nation's greatest grasslands, rugged Ozarks, and broad river flood plains converge and overlap here. So this provides for many what we call biomes in Missouri. So if you look at these natural divisions or biomes, you can see that to the north, the glaciers came down roughly. There were 4 glaciation periods, and 3 of them came into Missouri. And they extended roughly in that orange area, roughly as far south as the Missouri River. So that area is pretty well scoured, and flat. And then to the west, we have the Osage Plains, where the prairie, all the great grasslands farther west, have pressed into the state. To the south, we have the Ozark Plateau, and that was originally volcanic. And that was about 1.5 billion with a B years ago, and then gradually eroded into these Ozark, what we call them mountains. Technically they really aren't mountains, but we call them that. And then to the south we have the Mississippi lowlands, and that's kind of a wet marshy area. At one time the Gulf extended, I don't know whether to say the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, I don't know, extended as far north as about Cape Girardeau. And then we have the Ozark border, which is where we are here. Now, they aren't strong lines of demarcation like are on that map, so where they overlap, that's where you have the richness of the plants and animals, because you get both of them in the same area, and sometimes there are 3 areas that overlap. So what is a natural community? So recurring groups of plants and animals found in specific physical environments. So in other words, all the populations of different species that live in the same area and interact with one another. And that's a key, they interact with one another, the plants and the animals. So the Missouri conservation areas, we have more than 1,000 conservation areas in the state managed and protected by the Missouri Department of Conservation, which comprise of more than 975,000 acres, more than 800 miles of trails, a lot of these areas around here. 0.125% of state sales tax goes to the Missouri Department of Conservation. This is one thing the state got really right. So in 1976, we voted to amend the Missouri Constitution and give that to the Conservation Department, and that's why we have these wonderful conservation areas all over the state, and people will will their property, after they die. And I'm always grateful to those people. When I hike at some place that has a name on it, like Don Robinson or Glassberg or Hilda Young, or thank you, Hilda. You know, I appreciate your sharing this with me. So here are these conservation areas. So you can see they're all over the state. And then, in addition, we have Missouri State Parks. So we have 93 state parks right now and historic sites, and they're managed by the DNR, the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. So the largest one is Lake of the Ozarks State Park, and the smallest one is Morris State Park in southeast Missouri, and that's only 161 acres versus Lake of the Ozarks State Park at over 17,000. And here they are. Here are all those state parks and conservation areas throughout the state. So, you know, we really got something right when we did that amendment. So, there are more species of native plants in Missouri than all of Alaska. The two largest rivers in North America cross in and border Missouri. There, you can see that, the Missouri and the Mississippi. And then the Ozarks constitute the largest block of wooded land in the Midwest. Missouri has some of the most extensive and biologically rich caves in the country. And the prairies in the state are some of the largest remaining unplowed tall grass prairies in the Midwest, although there aren't many of them that are unplowed left. We do have them here, and we're also restoring them, particularly like Shaw Nature Reserve. There's a lot of restoration, prairie restoration going on there. So, these are the natural communities we're going to talk about. The native grasslands, which consist of prairies and savannas, the woodlands, the glades are my favorite, the forests, rivers and streams, wetlands, caves and karsts, and cliffs and talus. So talus is like scree at the bottom of the cliff, the rocks that fall down, collect at the bottom. Okay, so native grasslands. So first we're going to talk about prairies. Okay, the map on the left was native prairie before European settlement. And that's what's left of it, unplowed prairie on the right. So, not too much remaining. 40% of St. Louis and Kansas City was prairie. So prairie is dominated by grasses and broadleaf plants called forbs. Few woody shrubs and trees. They just don't grow there. And it's maintained by fire. Now the native peoples would burn the prairies, and lightnings cause fires. Here on the prairies that we manage, we generally burn them every 3 years. And in the winter. So, all above ground parts of these prairies only last 1 year. The permanent parts, the taproots, underground stems, are beneath the surface versus shrubs and trees that have much of their permanent growth above ground. So, when you think of all of this that's going on underground, that enriches the soil, and it, the moisture holding capacity is enhanced, and it's like a filter, improves water quality. And also the degradation of those underground roots, that organic material is broken down by microorganisms, so that enriches that soil. So that prairie soil is very, very rich. So the roots of these plants can penetrate up to 15 feet deep. Think of that. So it's a great wildlife habitat too.
These are all indigenous plants?
Yes. And, you know, this is a great sequester for carbon. as our trees or what have you. But the prairie is also a great sequester of carbon and the carbon dioxide in the air. So here's an example of the roots. Now these are 15 feet deep, some of these plants. Look at that. Okay, and look at what I'm going to circle. You know what that is?
Grass.
Kentucky bluegrass. Goes down what? 3-4 inches max.
Wow.
How much good is that doing for the soil? And what kind of chemicals do we have to add to that? Yeah. So some of these plants that are very small on the surface, the roots are going down 15 feet.
Wow.
Wow.
That is wild.
That's wild. So Midwestern tallgrass prairie was the greatest grassland complex on the planet. Most tallgrass prairie has been obliterated. Less than 5.5% of the original prairie remains.
Wow.
That's all.
Wow.
Well, we're growing all that corn and soybeans and wheat, right? Yeah. Okay, this is pre-settlement. And you can see that Missouri's in the tall grass prairie area. And then as the conditions get drier as you go west, you have the mixed prairie in the center of the continent, and then farther west you have shortgrass prairie, where it's still drier. And I think it's interesting, that little patch in Ohio there.
Yeah.
I'm
Right
from
out in Lake
Cincinnati. I'm
Erie.
from Cincinnati,
Okay.
in the southern part of the state. Oh, I didn't know that. The river.
That's my backyard right there.
Okay, here's that again, we're 15 million acres pre-settlement. Today, 75,000 acres, less than 0.5%. But these are some of the flowers you find on the prairie. The blazing star, and think of all the pollinators that are going to flock onto these flowers. You know, I've taken a lot of these pictures myself on my hikes. Now,
For you.
I'm not a bird photographer because they don't stay still, but the plants, I have a friend who is, but the plants stay still, and so I can photograph them. And being a hiker, I have thousands of photographs. So this is the compass plant, and it's rather tall, and the edges point north and south, and that way the leaves, which are east and west, can pick up more of the sun's rays. So that's why they call it a compass plant. You know, you can tell what direction it is. You can see there the leaves where the red ring is. Now this plant is in the same genus, the cup plant. And if you look at the water there and the leaf axils, it collects water when it rains, so it's great for the birds. So the little birds go in there and drink that water from the plant, and it's a big plant. It'll grow, 8 feet tall or so. So they're not on the ground, these little birds, and they go in there and drink. I think that's really neat. Here's Queen of the Prairie, Philopendula, beautiful pink, another tall one. And common milkweed with a big bumblebee on it. And milkweed is the larval food for what butterfly? Monarch butterfly, right. Any milkweed is the larval food, but that's the common one. But the flowers on milkweeds I think are really beautiful when you look at them up close. Bunch flower, there's another big plant. The rootstock of this is said to be poisonous, so the natives use the roots to kill flies. All kind of stories. And then there's rattlesnake master. And that one, the Native Americans used an extract of the root supposedly to neutralize the snake venom. Plants are amazing, and we get so many wonderful drugs, for example, from plants. I went to a program at the garden last week on a tropical rainforest, and it's just amazing, the nut plants, and we haven't even tapped the surface of what the wonders of those plants, and yet we're destroying them, right? Okay, and then a lot of grasses. There's little blue stem, and we have big blue stem. Indian grass. I just use common names in these talks. And switchgrass. And then a lot of birds on the prairie. There's a little bobwhite quail, indigo bunting. Males are beautiful, aren't they, on that bird? There's a prairie hen, northern harrier, song sparrow, and meadowlark. These are just, I'm just giving you representatives. There are many more, but these are birds that you might come across on the prairie. And then animals. Now, the bison and the elk used to be there, but they've been extirpated, unfortunately. There's a coyote. Great Plains rat snake. And people coil on snakes, and snakes are really neat animals because they're very, very important to ecosystems. Very important. And they're very beautiful, actually.
Until they bite you.
Well, you don't have to.
What do they do for the ecosystem?
They keep checks on rodents and other animals. Of course, their excrement, it feeds the ecosystem. They go through the grasses, and they stir things up and keep it healthy. And there are just a lot of benefits of snakes and reptiles in general. Here's an ornate box turtle. I love them. I just think they're beautiful. This little snake will fit in your hand. It's that little. And this is not a picture I have, but I have a picture of, I picked one up and it fit in my hand.
It's not poisonous.
No. You say venomous is the correct term.
Yeah, venomous.
Very few are venomous here. I think we have 3 in Missouri that are venomous. And that's a glass lizard. Doesn't have legs. And then the other type of native grassland are savannas. Now these are much rarer.
Can I ask you a question? The prairie areas are in state parks, are they preserved or not?
Some of them are preserved, some of them are not.
So they're being reduced further potentially?
I think that, the Prairie Foundation is very astute in trying to maintain them. And I think we have a lot better awareness now, say, than 50 or 100 years ago of what we really have, the benefit of some of these ecosystems, and that, to just get rid of everything forever, you're destroying something you may never be able to recover. And people didn't realize the benefits of some of these things, and there are just so many benefits. Plus, we need nature, don't we? Just as human beings, we need nature. So savannas then are transition communities between prairies and woodlands, which we'll talk about later. And so that's kind of a blend of grassland and wooded habitat. So the prairies they consider them prairies with scattered trees. So they have this wide space in between, so more light penetrates, so there's growth on the floor of the savannas. So the definition is up to a 30% tree cover constitutes a savanna. Here's some pictures of them. So the trees can be in groupings, or they can stand alone. They can be widely spaced, but you can see the sun rays coming through there. They have a great diversity of plant species, ground cover of prairie grasses and wildflowers. You can see all the yellow wildflowers in that picture. So the plant roots here again are deep, up to 14 feet deep on these savannas.
Wow.
It's hard to imagine. But savannas are very rare, very rare. These are some pictures of what they would look like.
Are prairies transitioning to savannas? Savannas are not being made anymore.
Well, there's a lot of transition on all of these things. Especially glades. glades really have to be protected because of the eastern red cedars that like to invade them. But there is an effort in this state to protect savannas at this time since they are so rare, yes. So the trees might be a bur oak, which is a huge oak tree, a blackjack oak. Here's what the leaves look like. Post oak, maybe a black hickory. Primarily our tree growth in Missouri consists of oak and hickories. And then animals, you may find a gray fox, coyote again. What about white-tailed deer? And an eastern cottontail. My dad used to hunt when I was a kid for those cottontails. He'd go hunting every fall. I have a lot in my yard. And then birds, you might find a red-tailed hawk, a red-headed woodpecker. I love them. American kestrel, northern cardinal, lots of them in our yards too, right? And eastern bluebird. There's this year, a big explosion of eastern bluebird populations, and you know why?
No.
Remember those cicadas last May?
Yes.
Oh, they like them.
Well, they had food, and more of the clutches survived because they could feed them so much. That's true of all the nesting birds, really. They came in May when they were nesting. And then woodlands. So woodland is a forest with an open canopy. So it's fire-adapted community, often occurring in association with glades, which we'll talk about next. And they occur on dry ridges and south and west-facing slopes. Now, anything that faces south and west is going to be hotter and drier because that's where the sun is. So they have this dry soil. Oaks and hickories dominate. Sparse, woody mid-story permits dense growth of ground cover. So they don't have a lot of mid-story trees. That you have the canopy and the ground cover. So native grasses, sedges, and wildflowers comprise the understory then. Something like this.
Wow.
For this. So the trees might be the chinkapin oak and the mockernut hickory, among many others, of course. I'm just giving you what you might find there. Of course, I could do a talk on each one of these communities. How about the sugar maple? And we have more maples now growing in our forests, and the concern is the wildlife, because maples don't have what's called mast, the nuts, like the oaks and hickories have. And that's the winter food for the wildlife, is that mast, the nuts. There's a black walnut. You know, we're very famous here in Missouri for our black walnut trees. And of course, that's a very desirable wood. And then wildflowers. Now, we have, I think, 6 native coneflowers here in Missouri. This is the only one that likes shade. And the purple coneflower, very common actually, but they want shade in the afternoon. They'll take the morning sun, but they want shade in the afternoon, so they'll grow in these woodlands. And asters, many kinds of asters, with a beautiful monarch on it there. Spring beauty, those are one of the first wildflowers to spring forth they should be coming up later this month. And then false Solomon seal. Animals, maybe the zebra swallowtail, great spangled fritillary. bumblebee, many native bees, and there's a little eastern chipmunk. Got a lot of them in my yard too. Gray squirrel, I have a lot of them in my yard. And grasshoppers. There's a little vole, which I find at the bottom of my steps going to the basement sometimes. I rescue them. I rescue them. I could not kill one. This is a vole, yeah. Okay, and birds might be a scarlet tanager, an ovenbird. They have a very distinctive call. There's a little chickadee. I'm sure you're familiar with that one.
Yeah, she's got good pictures.
A little wood thrush. I did not take the bird pictures, as I told you.
Oh.
But most of these others I have taken. Glades, this is my favorite ecosystem, my favorite biome. So they're dry and sunny openings in woodlands with shallow soil and bedrock very close to the surface. So the rock is just right on the surface. But oh my goodness, spring and early summer, they are the most beautiful place to ever be. So they occur in timbered areas on south and west facing slopes of hills. So south and west again, those are your hotter areas. So they have these shallow, rocky soils, and they have desert-like conditions. So as a result of that, they support very unique animals, wildflowers, and grasses. Very few trees, and if there are any, they're very small. So they range from a few hundred square feet to 100,000 acres. We have a lot of glades in Missouri, actually. So, what is growing in the glades is going to depend upon the pH of the soil, which is dependent upon the pH of those rocks. So limestone is calcium carbonate, and dolomite is calcium magnesium carbonate, and they are alkaline. And many of there are many glades, especially in Jefferson County, a lot of glades in Jefferson County, and they will foster, say, a different type of plant than would grow from an acid rock. Now, chert is an acid. Has an acid pH. Chert is the rock that the Native Americans used to use to make their arrowheads. And then sandstone, which is also acid. And then the igneous rocks, rhyolite and granite. There's a granite glade. You can see the pink granite there. So those chert, sandstone, and the igneous rocks, rhyolite and granite, are acid, different flora depending upon the pH. Here's a trail at Valley View Glades in Jefferson County, which I frequent. You can see, look at that rock, it's just right on the surface. Lots of coneflowers growing on glades. There's a glade coneflower, yellow cone, that's the only one that's yellow, the rest of them are pink. There's the pale purple coneflower. Missouri evening primrose, another beautiful plant. Indian paintbrush. Fremont's leather flower, that's actually a clematis. You know, it's the same genus as these vines that we plant, you know, in our gardens. It's actually a clematis, but it is not a vine. Black-eyed Susan with a butterfly on it. Blue false indigo, baptisia. Coreopsis, many species of coreopsis. And then the animals. Now, the animals on glades are genuinely reptiles or insects because a reptile, which is the same weight as a mammal, uses 1/6 the energy. So since these are rocky, dry areas, the reptiles flourish here. And this is, I think I got another picture of it, yeah. This I took on a hike, this picture on a hike from Johnson's Shut-ins up to Comstock Mountain. 13 miles, boy were we tired, cause it was all uphill.
A lot of beautiful color.
Well, it's May, and this is a male, and he's got his best colors on to attract the ladies because it's breeding season. And,
Colors change, huh?
well, yeah, he gets drab in the winter.
That's interesting.
What's interesting about these glades is, and they're, you know, like they're deserts, they're desert areas. And between 10,000 and 4,000 years ago, this whole area was part of a desert, extending all the way to what we think of as desert in the southwest.
Wow.
And then, 4,000 years ago, the climate changed and we became much wetter here. So these desert animals were isolated then on these glades, and they evolved differently than the desert animals, which is now in the southwest of this country. So they evolved, you know, they were isolated.
Albert Lizard. Pretty handsome.
He's a handsome devil, and he's pretty big, you know, he'd be like a foot long. There's a milk snake, and I think they're a beautiful snake. There's a scorpion, maybe a tarantula. Tarantula is the largest spider, but it only uses its venom.
Oh,
It won't bite. It only to get food. So, you know, it's not going to bite. I mean, we hit
Not
places
gonna
where we
bite.
hit them crawling up and down our arms. They're really fun to play with. They're not going to do anything to you. They only use their venom, you know, to sting a food source. Okay, now we're going to talk about forests. We got 15 million acres of forest in this state. And you can see all that is forested. So, the forest has layers, and the overstory is the canopy, the top. And that's large, dense tree canopy, little light penetration. The mid-story has the smaller trees, shrubs, and vines. And then the understory, and they sometimes divide that into the shrub and the ground-covered layer. So you got the little trees, the tree seedlings, grasses, shade-tolerant shrubs, and ferns and mosses. So there's a diagram looking something like that, as you can see. So it's actually divided, but very, very dense. So this is what it looks like. You know, if you're walking in the forest, there's not a lot of light penetration there. The only light penetration is this time of the year before the trees leaf out. And that's when we get the wonderful wildflowers, before the trees leaf out. So, the overstory consists of these trees: oaks, hickories, black walnut, hackberry, sugar maple, shortleaf pine, ash, cottonwood, persimmon, American elm.
Why are the sugar maples invading that area so successfully?
They're moving in from the east because they're the main tree in the Appalachian region, and as we get drier, they seem to be invading here.
That's a big hillside.
Yeah. Oaks, white oak, big majestic tree, and then post oak, closely related. I want you to look at the leaf on that. You always recognize the leaf on a post oak. Can you see how it's cross?
Mm-hmm.
It's the post oak leaf.
Mm-hmm.
It was shaped like a cross. That's how you know it. And then there's black oak, northern red. I have one of these in my backyard. And then hickories, like the shagbark hickory, there's the black hickory, mocker nut, many types, but those are, I'll go back, I kind of changed fast there. Maybe you want to look at that in a minute. And then shortleaf pine. We have 3 native conifers in Missouri. The bald cypress, which was down in the Boot Heel area, and the eastern red cedar, which is really a juniper, but we call it a cedar, but it's a juniper, and the shortleaf pine. Now this, before European settlement, 6.6 million acres in Missouri was covered by this tree. What did they do with it? Well, before that, railroad ties. Between 1880 and 1920, they got rid of everything but a 500,000 acres. So we went from 6.6 million acres of this to a 500,000 acres for railroad ties and later telephone poles. So the mid-story then, we have trees like the pawpaw, the dogwood, redbud, serviceberry, pretty in the spring. The dogwood, serviceberry, and redbud are always so beautiful in the spring. And then we have vines like the grapevine and the Virginia creeper, which really gets beautiful in the fall. And it gets so red in the fall because it's attracting the migrating birds. Come and eat my berries and spread me around, spread my seeds around. So it gets that beautiful color to attract the migrating birds. And then the shrub layer, maybe you have a spice bush. How about some of the viburnums, like the black haw viburnum? We have quite a few native viburnums in our forests. Also the fragrant sumac and Ozark witch hazel. My witch hazel is blooming right now. It is gorgeous. And then you have these wonderful wildflowers, and you say, how do they grow? Well, there's, like I said before, there's no leaves on the trees in the spring until they leaf out. You go hiking up till the end of April, and you see all these wonderful wildflowers. And there's bloodroot, which is my absolute favorite wildflower. Trillium, we have 6 native species of trillium here in Missouri. There's bellwort, trout lily. Sometimes they call that dog-tooth violet.
Did you do a lot of hiking through the woods
I still do.
and take photographs?
These are all my photographs.
My
5,000.
mother did that with the guy who had all those kind of pictures in National Geographic. She had stacks and stacks of National Geographic.
Mine are all electronic, they're all digital.
Yeah.
Dutchman's breeches. It's interesting. They look like they're in the same genus as that old-fashioned bleeding heart plant, like your mother always had in her garden. And we moved from. And then they look like a pair of pants hanging upside down on the clothesline. That's what they call them.
Yeah, they
Dutchman's
do.
breeches. And there's wild ginger. You have to look for that when you spread the leaves apart and look for it. And then, we have a number of ferns. Christmas ferns actually stay green all winter. Maidenhair ferns, I love them. Walking fern. Every place where the point of that frond touches, a new frond develops, so that's why they call it walking fern. And there's a bracken fern. Those are little larger. But actually, the walking ferns are green all winter also. And then mosses. We have more than 300 species of mosses here in this state. And then animals, maybe you find a little raccoon, deer, white-tailed deer. There's your little gray squirrel again. How about a spotted skunk?
Oh, sure. Gotta have one of those.
But you know, the striped skunks are on the prairie, but the spotted skunks are in the forest. And then also the little possum, the babies.
Oh, my land.
So how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 or so. And that's, well, it looks like there's a little one in her.
Seven.
Yeah, 7.
Yeah. I did not take
Not
that.
counting Mom.
Right. And then three-toed box turtle. Like we showed you the ornate box turtle before. This one likes the forest. And there's a little spotted salamander, amphibian.
Wow.
I've never seen one of these, but they're there. They come out.
Upsetting.
They come out. Have you seen some?
That's what they're saying.
They come out at night. There's a little red fox. Gray fox likes the open areas, but the red fox likes the treed areas, the forested areas. Now you know they're reintroducing elk in Missouri, down in the Ozarks at Peck Ranch, and now they've even opened up a hunting season for them. And I think, you know, just and also they're letting him hunt black bear now too. Hopefully they have it well controlled. And then birds, you know, the wild turkey. How about the pileated woodpecker? That's the one with the 18-inch wingspan. You know, the Woody Woodpecker. Remember those cartoons when you were a kid? Blue jay. He likes my backyard too. Maybe a barred owl. I have one of them too. And then rivers and streams. The two greatest rivers on this continent converge here, you know. Missouri and Mississippi, but we have also many other ones too.
Yeah.
Here's the confluence. You can see the Big Muddy, the Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very defined. But these are all the watersheds in Missouri. And look, all those are little streams that go. So you got the Mississippi River watershed, the Missouri River watershed, which is the largest, the yellow area there, the White River watershed down to the south, and the Arkansas River watershed to the southwest. So you get 4 different watersheds here in the state. And then the Mississippi Flyway. You know, these birds migrate. The flyway converges right here and goes out like a branching tree, doesn't it? If you look like that. There are 4 flyways on the continent, but this is the largest one. And they come right up the Mississippi, and then they go up the Ohio, and you know they branch out like a tree there. And of course, it goes in the opposite direction in the fall, but it all happens here. So we have 110,000 miles of flowing water. I'm sure all of you have made use of this. I know when our kids were little, we used to do a lot of floating on the beautiful rivers here. So the stream regions are the grassland prairie, the Ozark streams, the Mississippi lowland streams, and then the big river, of course. They support an abundance of plant and animal life, including 200 species of native fish. So they provide food and water not only for the animals that live in the water, but also for other wildlife. Those are pelicans, you know, there. People depend on rivers and streams for drinking water, food, manufacturing, irrigation, navigation, energy production, and of course recreation. And there's your, you know, people come from all over to float on our rivers. And we have these wonderful, of course, they were reintroduced also and doing very well here. And you hear about the eastern hellbender all the time. At our zoo, we have a big program to try to save them and reintroduce them.
I didn't know him.
And many turtles. There's the eastern river cooter and the alligator snapping turtle. You don't want to put your finger out, then you?
Wow. He looks like a rock. He's not.
That's called camouflage. And then cold water crayfish and of course beaver. There's a pallid sturgeon. We hear a lot about that, about on the Missouri River, about trying to keep them from going extinct.
Huh.
Cottonmouth. That one you probably don't want to take them out with you. And there's some of the fish. You know, you got catfish, you got bass, you got sunfish, you got darters, many kinds of fish here. Probably some of you were fisher people in your day, right? Yeah. Mussels, freshwater mussels, cold water crayfish. And then you get the frogs, the western chorus frog and the bullfrog. Chorus frogs will be calling very soon now. And then the birds, you know, the belted kingfisher, you hear them along the river. And there's the trumpeter swans up there at Riverlands. They do counts on them. They're here in the winter. Snow geese, bald eagles. Of course, the bald eagles come south the colder it gets, and they go to the locks along the Mississippi. But when the fish go through the locks, they're stunned, and so they're easy catching for the eagles. And then plants, you might find various alga, pickerel weed, water lilies.
I love the water lilies.
Me
So
too.
gorgeous.
Me
Are
too.
they like a bush?
What?
Are they like a bush?
Water lilies, no. They have an underground root system and long stems. Various kinds of rush, cattails. Everybody knows what cattails are. And then scouring rush. Apparently the natives used to use that to clean their pottery. And then you had the plants that are not in the rivers and streams, but near them, like those water willows, cottonwoods, sycamores. They call that the ghost tree in winter, the sycamore. Looks like a ghost. And then river birch also. And then we go to wetlands. So there are transition zones between land and water-based environments. Historically dominated the floodplains and river deltas in Missouri. Many were converted to agricultural land in the last 150 years. You always hear swamp seems to have had a negative connotation where, you know, these are our biofilters and so rich in plant and animal life and so important to filter out pollutants. So they support a wide variety of plants, birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, mammals, and insects. Different types of wetlands. The seasonal ones that, you know, in the spring when it rains more, it's wet, but then they dry up in August. Or virgin marsh, shrub, scrub, forested swamp, like down there in the lower right. Fens and seeps there where the water table is very high. So what do? So they're biological filters that remove sediments and pollutants from surface waters. They're natural sponges. Also, they reduce the severity of floods. You know, when we build on all those floodplains and prevent the water from going out and seeping into the ground, we're preventing that. So they're biologically productive, providing breeding, spawning, and nursery habitat for wildlife. And the migratory birds use them greatly. Plants, water lily again. water horsetail, and again, your cattails. Well, those are Amazon lilies. Those aren't native. Yeah, those aren't. They're called Victoria lilies, but they're not native. You have to bring them in the winter because they're tropical. Bulrush. Think of Moses in the bulrush, huh? Pickerel weed, duckweed on the surface. And then, of course, you have a lot of amphibians like reptiles. There's the red-eared slider. Those are the, when I was a kid, they had them in a bowl in the dining room, and it was my pet. It was my pet. Was about this big, you know, and they paint their shells. And, that's a type of salamander, Amphiumus salamander, amphibian, and there is a little fowler's toad. So that little guy is more on land than in the water, although their tadpoles are in the water. They reproduce in the water. And then mink. And of course, we have a lot of mink in this area. I'm big into koi, and out right here in the West County, they're just mink everywhere, and you have to cage your koi in the winter because the mink eat them. A little muskrat, and a swamp rabbit, and then so many birds. Great egret, great blue heron, you know that one, red-winged blackbird, pelicans, king rail, and so many waterfowl, so many ducks. The wood duck is the prettiest duck, as far as I'm concerned. Look at that one. Put it in merganser, common merganser. There's a mallard, you know that one. There's a redhead, perfectly named. Northern shoveler. You can see how broad his beak is. And then caves and karst. All those areas that are blue, red, purple, whatever, are areas where there are caves and karst in Missouri. The red is where it's intense.
What is karst
That's what I'm
mean?
going to tell you.
Yeah, here it is.
I'm going to tell you right now.
She's so excited.
Okay, so areas of porous limestone or dolomite containing deep fissures and sinkholes, as well as underground cave systems and springs. So karst is the whole cave, underground streams, that whole thing is karst. Karst. So the types, terrestrial and aquatic cave systems, sinkholes, we all know what those are, where the car falls in all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Well, losing streams, those are underground streams. We don't see them. Sometimes they come above ground, but most of the time they're underground. You hearing me now?
Very well.
Good. In springs. So it looks something like this, where the water seeps down through the rocks, and it forms these caverns and streams and caves, open areas underground. So everything is underground. So, facts. More than 7,500 identified caves. We call this the cave state, but Tennessee has 10,000. But we're the cave state. So the rock in Missouri caves averages to 300 to 500 million years old. Very old.
What was before that?
Well, I don't go back that far. Home to more than 900 unique cave-dwelling fish and wildlife. Source of drinking water. 28 caves under the city of St. Louis. Okay, Now we have all these, I'm sure you've gone into caves, you see all these wonderful formations.
Yeah.
The stalactites come down from the top, and the stalagmites come up from the bottom. And then we have cave pearls, and we have halictites. Halictites are actually a form of stalactite. They're kind of gnarly. Then, where the stalactites and the stalagmites meet, we have columns, soda straws. I love these definitions. How about this one? Bacon. Doesn't that look like bacon? I've never seen bacon,
Imagination,
but it looks like bacon. And then draperies, another very descriptive term. Draperies. And then there's all this ancient cave art. And this is well over 1,000 years old, that the native peoples, produced all this cave art. You might find bats. Of course, they go out at night, right? Cave salamander. Ozark cavefish. You can see a lot of these animals don't have eyes. They don't need eyes because they're living in the dark all the time, so they've evolved without eyes. Tumbling Creek cave snail. Grotto sculpin, another little fish.
Oh,
Grotto
my God.
salamander. Look at the color of that.
Yeah.
There's the cave crayfish. He doesn't have eyes either. And look at, they're white because they're never in the sun. Last of all, we're going to talk about cliffs and talus. So cliffs are steep vertical exposures of bedrock. They're 10 feet or more in height. That's what constitutes a cliff. And talus is sometimes called scree, same thing. So it's the rubble of weathered bedrock that collects at the cliff base. So, the scree is going to be down here. Here's the cliff, and then the scree down here. So here's a diagram of it. So you can see the plateau up at the top, and then the face of the cave, or of the cliff. And it has sometimes caves, little outcroppings, and actually incropping. And then here's the talus down here, right. So, they are formed from erosion and weathering. So it's an escarpment created by erosion or faulting above high gradient streams and large river floodplains usually. And, you drive along go over into Illinois up to along the river there, and you have all those cliffs and what Great River Road. Thank you. So, as a part of karst landforms, including sinkholes and collapsed caves, in Missouri they can reach 550 vertical feet. Now that is a tall cliff. So birds you might find turkey vultures, cliff swallows. Look at their little nests. Eastern phoebe. And again, American kestrel. We found those earlier in the presentation. Pretty little bird of prey. Timber rattler. Now there's one that's venomous, right? This one is not. A rough green stake. I have come across these before. And I got very excited when I did. I've only seen it once. Here's a little eastern wood rat. And there's a 5-line skink. That's a type of lizard. Skink. How about a pickerel frog? The cave salamander. Northern water snake. That one is not venomous. Cottonmouth is. So, we're gonna end here, but I wanna end with this quote from Frank Lloyd Wright, because I think it's very appropriate. Study nature, love nature, stay close to nature, it will never fail you.
Wow.
And I want to thank you for listening to me. These are my two hiking friends and our dog, her dog, the one on the left, Bruce. And the three of us have been hiking together since 2001.
Wow.
And we met in a field zoology class. And we've become the dearest of friends. So I hope you have enjoyed my talk, and I hope that, you can get outside and see a little bit, because everything's gonna be popping this month, right?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is the first time I've given this talk. This is a new one. And I try to develop one or two new ones every year. So this is the first time I have I think one or two more bookings for it, but this is the first time I've given. It took a lot of research.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you. I really appreciate your being such an attentive audience and coming to listen to me. And as I say, I love doing this. So when I have an attentive audience,
You have an awesome camera.
no, it's just a little point and shoot,
Yeah.
or my phone,
Or your phone.
or my phone. Now I just use my phone.
Right.
Wow.